So they came, at a friend's behest.
Oh, do not look at me so. A smile better suits a hero.
The dawn's light will shine again.
So let's get to the elephant in the room. No, not that elephant. I'm talking about the voice cast changing for everyone, because this took me so far back, right? And I'm going to be honest, I didn't like it at first. And that's not because anyone was bad, like far from it. It was obvious from the get-go everyone was immediately better than everyone from A Realm Reborn and the post-MSQ patches. But I'm someone that struggles a lot with voice changes. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be anime, games, shows, like whatever. It just doesn't matter for me, like better or for worse. It's a dramatic change, especially as a new player who's essentially binging the entire story. And of course I'm over it, right? I've heard far more of this cast than I ever have of the original. But it's funny to look back at the original cast now and see just how insanely different they are. And I do honestly wonder why Square Enix never got the new cast to re-record all of the old lines. Like, sure, it's probably more of a money thing, but there is also that if it ain't broke, don't fix it culture over there, which explains why the Mog Station is still straight from 2004. So now that I've got that off my chest and out of the way, welcome to the Sprout Talk for the award-winning Heavensward expansion for the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV. And for the MSQ, I can honestly say this is an expansion of two halves for me. If it involves Sky Islands and Bird People, let's just say I have to keep reminding myself of everything else this has to offer. Because the Sky Islands, Bismarck, the Vanu, it just... I didn't enjoy it, right? I genuinely can't remember what exactly this whole side plot was for. Like, was it just to get the dragons on our side? Like, or was that Ravana? Like, let me know in the comments. Oh, and real quick, did you know that statistically 97% of you are not subscribed to me? I got a ton of content on the channel already and have plans for a load more, especially for Final Fantasy XIV. So if you haven't yet, hit that sub button, do mans a favour. But for everyone that is subscribed, I appreciate you. So getting back to the Sky Islands, we could have done a bit more here with that. I felt like it was an excuse to add a zone in there to fill up the 6 slots. But that's the bad out of the way, right? Everything from here on out is pretty much nothing but up, because after all, this is the critically acclaimed award-winning Heavensward for a reason. Though the repeat use of having to get Heidling's blessing back wasn't exactly a highlight. I know that's Midgard-Sormer plot from A Realm Reborn, which was set up for Heavensward, but I feel like in their execution, the styling out of the ambiguity of for all the dragons and how they talk, they just slightly lost a bit of the substance with his motivations, and like they didn't clarify exactly what that was for. Like, sure, it's a test, right? And if we pass it, it makes the Warrior of Light stronger, but it was slightly more convoluted than I think it needed to be. But it all worked out in the end, right? So it's all fine. But we're now for real into all the good stuff, and just like Yoshi P and the rest of Creative Studio 3, we are locking in. Because guys, like everything with Ishgard, dragons, the dragoons, the primals, the Ascians, literally everything else in this expansion, it's near enough perfect. And a lot of that has to do with the emphasis here of the narration.
Heroes once celebrated as saviors of Eorzea, brought low through treachery, their names blackened with royal blood.
Which might be a funny thing to say, but a trope of everything being presented in the past tense just gives it that fancy old-timey feel. And I love it, and honestly, it makes it feel more like a Final Fantasy game for me, and I kind of missed it in A Realm Reborn.
A vibrant planet blessed by the light of the crystal.
Like, sure, 2.0 has Louis Soir, right, but it's not as memorable as Count Edmund here, and that's because Stephen Critchlow put his all in this role. And I kind of find it wild that I find out he died because I just happened to run into a vigil outside the Four Top Manor one night in September and asked people what's going on. But it's moments like that which really shows off the reason why this community has the reputation it has, so rest in peace Stephen Critchlow, and thank you. So let's actually get into the meat and bones of everything, because we ended the last patch framed for regicide and were forced to flee to Ishgard. And if you missed it, you can find that video in the top right. And it needs to be said, because I haven't mentioned her once in this series, because honestly, I didn't really think much of her at the start. But Tataru generally has one of the best glow-ups in this game, and it's kind of crazy how she goes from being such a nothing character to being the heart and soul of the Scions, so thank God she's here to keep everyone's head straight. And I can't talk about glow-ups without talking about Alphinaud, right, because this feels more like his arc than anything else. And rebuilding his character back up over the course of this expansion, and his fall is made all the more worse by finding out that the crystal braids were never actually his to begin with, right, and we've essentially been framed for a crime that wasn't ever committed. Because Nanamo's actually fine, like, shit like that is enough to give anyone PTSD and trust issues. But it makes for an incredible arc, right? Because coupled with his developing relationship with Justinian, Alphinaud absolutely is the star of this expansion. Which for me says so much because, as I said, everything here is just so good. The relationship between Hraesvelgr and Nidhogg, like their motivations in the Dragonsong War, their actions, which, speaking of actions, Hraesvelgr is just a hypocritical little bitch. He gives his eye to Nidhogg knowing full well what's about to happen, but will lecture literally everyone else on their actions of violence and whatever else. So I'm glad that Estinian basically chews him out every chance he gets. And since we're talking about it, goddamn Estinian, I'm just gonna say it every episode, right? Dragoons are just the best. They're the coolest things in Final Fantasy, and this very easily corrupted giraffe is no different. And to see the story thread from 2.0 job quest carry over to here, it feels like it was an expansion made just for this job. But the Dragoons and Dragon stuff is all very good, right? But I'd argue it's not the main component of this expansion. Like, it's obviously here and it's obviously a decent part of the chunk of the plot. But the real story lies with the Archbishop, the history of Ishgard, and because this is Final Fantasy XIV, the Ascians are involved as well. And I can't carry on talking about the MSQ without talking about what I consider to be the core of this expansion, and it's the campfire scene along with Hraesvelgr's introduction, right? These two scenes warrant all the awards that this expansion's won, and most of that is down to Estinia's character development here, because Giselle presents the truth of Ishgard and Dravanian history with Lady Shiva and Hraesvelgr, and then once Hraesvelgr goes over exactly what happens in the past, Estinian confronts the lie that he's been told his entire life, but he still lands the conclusion that Nidhogg needs to die. And it's such a great character moment for both him and the narrative that it carries the momentum from here on out. And yet again, we find ourselves in the middle of a political struggle and uprising, right? And I'm at the point where if a nation in Eorzea is ever going to turn us away for fear of an incoming coup, I honestly wouldn't blame them. Like, how could I? Everywhere we go is political carnage. But it's not all our fault, right? These Ascians just keep getting involved in Eorzean politics, but we gotta get rid of them. Gotta go. Which brings us to the start of the uprising in Ishgard with Aymeric, Lucia, and a handful of other more common folk like Hilda. And Hilda is a swing and a miss for me because she has so much potential and ultimately does nothing. Like, I'm assuming she's the machinist job quest giver, and I hope she is because I can't see why she's here otherwise, and that's a shame because she would have made a great Scion personally, and we're currently in the market for a lot of those right now. But speaking of needing more people around us, that now brings us to the assault on the vault, and I can do this. Yeah, you know, I'm an adult. Like, never in my life of playing games have I seen what feels like an entire community be on the same page, where the second you see a sprout in this dungeon, the same thing is just said to them by everyone, and it's for a good reason. Because everyone knows the emotional support sprouts need the second they come out of the hardest hitting cutscene you'll ever see.
It's no good. The wound is too deep. It refuses to mend.
And it works so well because of Horschiffon, right? This dude has been our personal cheerleader since we've met him. Like, he was one of the only people in 2.5 to have our backs and get his family to put us up in Ishgard. And he fights alongside us every step of the way and then drops one of the most devastating lines you'll hear and I think I've ever heard.
Do not look at me so. A smile better suits a hero.
So thanks to everyone that was in my instance, who messaged in the chat. It was genuinely really appreciated because I had to not leave for 5 to 10 minutes afterwards because that one hurt. But it's then made worse with Count Edmund's reaction, right? So you get this 1-2 punch straight in the heart.
There is no greater calling. Leave me to mourn and give chase for my son and for the nation he loved. Go!
And it's really easy to see and understand why this expansion is held in such a high regard. And from here on out, the expansion goes in a direction that I really enjoyed, and I want to stress that up top, because naturally the Garleans need to be involved. They're the secondary antagonists, right? But it takes us away from Ishgard into Azizlar, another ancient Allagan facility, which again is really damn cool. Just I wasn't expecting that from this expansion pitched to me as a war against dragons. But a detour that I really enjoyed, right, was figuring out what's happened to the other Scions exactly, because it's never explicitly stated that they're dead, and the first rule of storytelling is there's no body, no death, right? So we find out there's a chance to get Y'shtola back because she used a spell to take her and Thancred into the live stream. And when we get her back, just like Alpha Node, I was looking respectfully. But at this point, I'm really interested in how they give the Scions their own glow-ups, just like Alpha Node, right? Because even if it's half as good as his, it'll be worth it. But despite that, I kind of wish this subplot was in 3.1. If I'm being totally honest, I like the Matoya stuff, but just let us focusing on what's happening over here for now. But with that, it's now a straight shot to the end with Azizla, and they couldn't let us finish the expansion in peace. Oh no, we have to say goodbye to Yazael, who rightfully and thankfully goes out in a blaze of glory. But can we stop killing off the really compelling, really useful, tall grey-haired women wearing blue? Square Enix, I see what you're doing. Stop it. You're making a grown man cry too much.
You reject my divinity. Yet what have you to offer my people in its stead?
But we get this great ending spectacle of a fight with Thordan and the Knights of the Round, right? And once you get through the gauntlet of the Garleans and the Ascian fights leading up to it, it's a great run-up to the ending. And while I haven't done the extreme, and I know it's an MSQ boss, so I can't exactly be a wall for it, but I kind of wish they would turn the difficulty up because, come on now, it kind of makes the ending of Heavensward land with a bit of a wet fart. The fight with Thordan is really cool, and it's over in 0.3 tenths of a second. It's actually kind of nuts. But before I jump off the MSQ part of this video, it's really cool getting to see Tiamat and having that little lore dump and the conversation with Midgardsormr, which takes him from pet to mount, and it gives more context to the cause of the Bahamut, which, love that by the way. Generally, all the dragon stuff in this game might actually be my favourite part, and ending this thing with Nidhogg fully corrupting Estinian, slightly concerning. Don't love that, but he's not a woman, he doesn't have grey hair and blue clothes, so he's gonna be okay, I hope. But Dragoon main, right? There's no surprises on the concern for a fellow spiky one. So now that we've got through the MSQ, we're back once again to go over the endgame of the first part of this expansion. And like before, it's just going to be for 3.0, so I will only touch on the first part of the Alexander raids, because these are the first times you really get to do an 8-man raiding as a Sprout and the solo player, since Coils is Savage tier and not in the Duty Finder, and having to play this game for nearly 200 hours just to get to the first 8-man raid is kind of crazy. It's not something I've seen people talk about really, so sure, it's not the first raid you get to do because Crystal Tower is right there in the post 2.0 patches. But basically having to do 3 full games to get here is a choice. I respect the want to not fix what ain't broke, it's just kind of crazy. But the first tier is alright. I'm not overly enthusiastic about the quest attached to it, and the setting, while really cool, actually being a sign of Alexander, the encounters themselves are a downgrade from Coils as a whole. At least for these early tiers anyway. And the same kind of goes for the dungeons. I love the Vault, but I can't really pick out any singular dungeon and say it's a standout. They're all good. None of them are outright bad, and I'm not sure if this is where CS3 decided that every dungeon has to follow that 20 minutes in and out rule, and that's why none of them stand out or not. But thankfully that's not the case for the trials, right? They're all really good here. And it's only 3 and 3 extremes, which I don't have the bird mount yet. I'm currently working on it. I have 2, so hopefully by the time it comes to cover the post 3.0 patches, I'll have it, but we'll see. I'm not confident on that one. So wrapping all this up, Heavensward absolutely lives up to the hype. It definitely takes a lot to get here, but it absolutely warrants the amount of content, because without putting anything before it down, because I'm not about that, right? Plus, as I said previously, which again, you can find in the top right corner, I enjoyed A Realm Reborn and loved the lead up into Before the Fall with 3.5, and it's seamless going from one expansion to another. It just really isn't a whole nother level to anything else so far. And while there's some things I'd have moved around and personally done differently, I wouldn't change a thing about what we got, because what we got just shows the level of talent the studio has, and their ability to pick this game back up and turn it into something that's as celebrated as it is just wonderful. And while I appreciate that for people who weren't or aren't even feeling A Realm Reborn and the post-patches might not want to slug out like 80 to 100 hours of a game for it just to start getting good quotes, if anyone is listening and you're feeling like that, it's okay to stop, right? It's okay to not force yourself through it. But just know that if you do carry on, you're in for one hell of a ride that once it's done, you'll, like me, will just want to carry on and see this story through to the end. Walker. But on that bombshell, it's high time I ended this up by saying thank you so much for watching. I genuinely hope you all enjoyed it because I enjoy making it. So if you did, leave a thumbs up and a comment for the algorithm. I really reply to most of them, if not all. And if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well. I don't upload that often because these generally take time, so there won't be any sub box spam. And at most, it'll be once a week. So be sure to check out the other videos on the channel as well. Me and Jared just wrapped up our first season of our anime podcast, Pro and Noob, where we talked about Neon Genesis Evangelion, episode by episode, movie by movie. And we're generally so proud of it, and it's something different. So with that, I've been Mitch692, you've been great, and this has been another Sprout Talk. So peace.